Welcome to Techniques for the Win. This here is episode 2. And as I mentioned in the past that I wanted my this series here to cover topics that would come from a practical position that maybe I ran across in a game. Now, this position you see here on the board actually came from a chess.com puzzle rush. And I believe it was around 2,700 plus, meaning that it was about 49 or number 50 on the tactics list. Now, another disclaimer I will say about this position here is that, again, I want my topics, generally speaking, to cover rating range of 1,000 all the way up to 2,000. And I want to be able to also make that material accessible to people that are lower rated, say if you're like 500 ELO or whatever. However, in this case here, this puzzle here, I must confess, is probably more suited towards, I would probably say 1,800 and higher. However, I'm going to break this down and I'm going to make this as simple as I can. So even if you're rated 1,000 or maybe even 500, you will be able to extract something from this and be able to incorporate it in your own games perhaps, and well, help you along in your chess journey. All right. So now let's get right here to the position at hand. All right. White to play. Now, one thing I want to say is in terms of before we really dig into the position is that sometimes how you think is going to determine how quickly or how efficiently you are able to come up with an idea. So, for example, we can say right off the bat that if we go pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, at the very least it's going to be a draw because nothing can stop you from getting a queen. Now I must confess, now if I go back to the starting position, even if you go, pawn takes pawn or even pawn to b7, you cannot be stopped from getting a queen. So what does this mean? Well, that means that it's the easiest line to calculate and it's pretty much guaranteeing you a draw or nearly guaranteeing a draw. I'll put it that way. So in other words, I spent about 15 minutes on those two moves trying to make them work for a win. And so there lies the first topic I want to cover that's really not on this list here is that really how you think about a position. So I would say if you see very easy, very short lines you can calculate very readily, don't try to make them work just yet. Save them for, after you calculate the more complicated lines. Because if the complicated lines don't work, say if you got, say, 30 minutes on the clock and you spend, say, 20 to 25 minutes calculating a complicated move and can't figure anything else out. Well, the worst case scenario is you can go back to the easy lines such as pawn takes a7 or pawn to b7 and still get and basically guarantee yourself a draw. So now with that being said, once you get in that mind frame of not just following the easiest ways to calculate and the easiest moves first, you'll begin to see other candidate moves. And in all honesty, this position here encompasses several techniques. Not consider this more than just a tactics puzzle. This has a positional puzzle and also a nuanced puzzle in terms of how you're going to create the winning path. So, all right, now we're going to really jump into the puzzle here. So what are the reasonable, let's think about it. What are the reasonable candidate moves for white? Well, as we discussed, pawn takes pawn is one, b7 is another one, but we don't want to go for those. And we can rule out going, say, king to h1 or knight to h1, because that's not, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Even now, king to f1 actually is a move because you're getting closer to stopping this pawn here. But that likely will only guarantee you a draw. So what are we missing here? Well, there is one one move here that I did not mention just yet. And once I mention it, I'm assuming that your creative juices are going to start flowing about what is that move achieving. And that move is E5 check. Now, if you don't see this move here, there's going to be a couple of reasons why you may not see that move. The first reason why you may not find this move is that you may not be familiar with terms such as driving on, which we want to drive the king on a square that will make it less desirable. So for example, if king takes, we push, we're not only threatening a queen to get queen, we're threatening to get a queen with check. Okay? So that's the main point here of this driving on. Now, what about if king goes to F5? Well, that's a little bit different winning technique here. And so basically in this position, after I play E5 check, I'm only going to cover two moves, which is king takes pawn and king to F5. Because really any other moves lead to some sort of variation or just make it much easier for white to win the game. All right. So let's start with E5, king takes. Now, you might think, and also let's just rule out the fact of going here. But this here only draws because of takes. And you push and get a queen. Well, black pushes in to get a queen. And black is just up a pawn here. So if anybody got any winning chances, it's black. So you definitely would not want to go that route. So the move here, after king take, is to obviously go bishop b7. Now, the tricky bit here for black is that black could lose this game fairly quickly if he just went ahead and grabbed a pawn, where you just go ahead and jump in with a queen. And well, again, you can come back here and you'll be able to stop this pawn from queening. However, black does have a trick or two up his sleeve, and that first trick is to go get a queen. After you get a queen, now he takes this pawn here with check. And now you may think, well, what on earth am I going to do here? Because what's preventing black from going to this square on d6 and stopping this pawn? Now, what you should see here is that if you get the bishop on this square and on this, and the king is here, if you were to land a knight here, that would be a check. Now you see a little difference here. And also, you also notice that if this king wasn't here, this whole diagonal here would be open. But the king is blocking this diagonal. So here comes the next move you would have to see. You have to be comfortable with sacrificing pieces. And I'm going to put an asterisk on the word sacrifice. Now, if you sacrifice a piece, genuinely sacrifice for a position, and there's no immediate win, but say if you get a couple of pawns, maybe you get the initiative, that's a sacrifice. But it's in some cases when you sacrifice and there's a direct win, to me, it's a sacrifice by definition, but in over the board play, that's not really a sacrifice because you're sort of upgrading, if you will. So for example, the only winning move here, I want you to pause the video right now. And if you're not going to pause the video, I'm going to go ahead and play it. And that move is knight to E3. And don't forget, you're still threatening to get a queen like right now. Now, if black was to take, here's the power of the king being in the way. Because now, as you see, now his bishop can't get back to stop this pawn. You just simply step out of the way. There's nothing stopping you from getting a queen here. All right. So we go back. And if black goes here to stop the pawn, simply check here, picks up the queen, picks up the bishop, and you just upgraded your knight to a queen. That's really, so in other words, that's why I'm saying it's not really a sacrifice, but by definition, it is. So that's sort of the first part of this this right here is how we just showed driving on, sacrificing a piece. We restricted that bishop in multiple ways from getting to the queen and square, and we also executed some forced moves. Now, the other move we want to cover is after we go e check is king to f5. Now, what is the winning move here? Well, if you think about it, it's still the same scenario if you go here, here. I mean, you get a queen, he gets a queen with check. I mean, if anybody playing for a win here is white, I mean, it's black, you just simply go here and take this, for example. And I mean, maybe not that move, but that actually loses it. But you could argue that actually, I don't even know this could be winning. I mean, this right here, I mean, that, you know, that's still within drawing territory, but there's so many ways for you know, black to play for win. Like he could just simply take here, take, and then just take this, for example. You know, whatever the case may be, because although a computer might evaluate this as equal, playing this in a practical game may be hard for white. All right, so now if we go back king to f5, we still see that the move b7 is the winning move. And you might say, well, what's the difference here? Because this, you know, once this bishop takes, well, as we can see, first of all, we already know that we want this diagonal block. So this pawn actually restricts the bishop from going to this square. And also, if the bishop was to get here, for example, it can't really get back this way either because it blocks it from this way either. So that was a forced move that we just played to block that bishop. And also, it is, you know, it's just restricting this bishop, sort of just making it a bad bishop. Now, what is the move here after, you know, the bishop goes here? So what is the difference of getting, you know, what's the winning technique here? The winning technique is the stunning king to f1. And you're like, oh my goodness. Now he can't push in to get a queen right now because you just simply take it, right? But he could take your bishop first. And if you took the bishop, well, he just gets a queen and everybody gets a queen. And it's black playing for a win here, for example, like in this case. All right, so what about after he takes the knight? You got to keep calculating here. The move is king to e2, stopping this bishop from, stopping this pawn from queening. And take a look. His bishop is restricted again because the pawn is on that square from, you know, so for example, if he goes here, you just simply pushing to get a queen, and now the game is just simply over with. So this topic here of driving on, sacrificing a piece, being able to restrict this bishop based on forced moves with that pawn to e5 check, that is the absolute critical move. It's really hard to see that's, you know, to see these moves if you're not conditioned to wanting to sacrifice a piece, first of all. Second of all, you got to be comfortable with playing for something that's not an immediate, say, one or two moves that where you can get, say, a queen and win the game. Like, for example, if we go back to the initial position, let's go all the way back to the initial position here. As I said, pawn takes pawn, bishop, pawn to b7. You don't need to think about those in the beginning of this position, because what you can say to yourself is, well, again, no matter what, I can play those moves, but let me explore other moves and see how it goes. And with that said, you just might come up with knight. You just might come up with pawn to e5 and win this game.